And they're all being integrated in the sense that prevention over the last maybe 10, 15 years has become the big thing. You mentioned loneliness. Loneliness for many, many years would not have been a factor. People would have known it was there, but they wouldn't have built it into the equations for sorting out healthcare.
It's only literally in the last 5 years we've had the evidence that your mortality rate is affected to the scale of 50% by your levels of loneliness after a heart attack, for example. The sheer scale, the magnitude of the impact is bigger probably than almost any clinical intervention post a heart attack, which is quite surprising and quite challenging.
Let's, I mean, now might be a good point to actually get the results of our little loneliness brainstorming that went on earlier. We've got microphones here. Would anyone like to come up with what was your 1-minute idea for trying to counter this, the debilitating effects of loneliness that Geoff was talking about? Anybody got something? Yep, right. Could I get a microphone to the lady at the back and then the lady there? Anyone on this side? Anyone on this side? You're keeping it to yourselves and going to introduce it when you get back home. Is that the idea?
We'll do shyness afterwards. Shall we?
Oh, right. Yes. Right. Yes. Sorry. Yeah.
I'm Jill Ayling from the Department of Health. I lead on older people.
Could you just hold the microphone closer?
Sorry, Jill Ayling from the Department of Health. I lead on older people and dementia. I just read a document coming down on the train this morning from the WRVS, who have 45,000 volunteers who go into older people's homes. They're 65 plus. I think that's a really good model of how you can use third sector to help isolation for older people.
So that's utilising the voluntary sector, which is one of the things you talked about, Geoff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Should we take? Yes, the lady just in front here. Anyone else? Anyone else? No?
I'm Penny Attridge from Spark Ventures. I think, given the scale of redundant computers that are lying around everyone's homes, that there should be a program in schools to help 16 to 18-year-olds clean up their computers and simply set them up so that their grannies or their great aunts or whoever can access email and getting their supermarket shopping online, because then the grandkids would send text messages and emails to grannies, whereas they won't go and visit, and granny can't hear what they say on the phone. But you have to do that in conjunction with making broadband available to old people for free, just like TV licenses are. And you might even get someone like Microsoft to think it's such a great idea that they'd sponsor that program.
So it's grannies on Facebook, yeah?
Not
I mean, that's
Facebook, but I mean, I think emails, because the problem with Facebook isn't appropriate for people over 30, really, but emails is.
Just to comment on both of those. First of all, the second one, in Australia, broadband is being basically brought to every single home. And that is forcing quite an interesting conversation, just like what you've described, about how do we start getting to the next generation of services to make the most use of what will be 100% broadband. And I think you're right on the ticket there, because in fact, there's a real need for teenagers to have more reasons to get out and do things with other adults rather than just Facebook. And at relatively low cost and little effort, as you say, you can get them connecting with the otherwise slightly lonely older person, and both benefit and both get a series of skills. But that requires a different relationship between the health service and schools and charities with young people. And I think your point is absolutely right too. WRVS used to be actually a very generously funded, almost a public service with a huge reach. I think the various targets being set by the department on reducing hospital admissions and hospital readmissions for older people could be one of the great drivers of innovation, because one of the lessons of all the many experiments over the last few years, things like POPs and so on, is that probably the best ways of helping people not return to hospital 3 months, 6 months after discharge will be quite a subtle mix of things. Some very clinical, some very much about reablement, but some about social links, links to friends or family or neighbours, and some will be about being encouraged to again do something useful and maybe volunteer for others in the street, and some will be about technology, but often quite simple technologies in the home to help if you have a fall or something goes wrong. And it's quite clear we have some of the building blocks of, as it were, a next generation set of services for older people isolated in their homes. But almost, as far as I can see, despite things like WRVS, nowhere that it quite feels like it's the definitive mature model which will really bring down those readmission rates by 40, 50, 60% rather than 3 or 4. And that's a great sort of challenge for the system, how to apply the sort of methods I've been describing to a very sort of acute, very costly problem, costly both in economic terms but also in terms of human misery. And this is certainly one which me and my colleagues are working on at the moment.
Great. Well, I set up about 18 years ago a charity called YouthNet, and one of our websites is called thesite.org. Yeah. And it's all about helping 16 to 25-year-olds with all kinds of advice, ranging from starting your own business right through to drugs, relationships, and health. I mean, there's a very, very good section on health for which we have had a great deal of help. And I remember someone saying, well, YouthNet has set this up. What about the over 50s? And the Experience Corps was set up at one point, which alas, didn't work, but it was to try to provide a kind of YouthNet service for the over 50s. And someone said, well, what do we call it? And the reply came back, why don't you call it HairNet instead of YouthNet? So we fortunately didn't take that up, actually. But you're absolutely right. I think there is a need for, just like the volunteering website doit.org caters for people of all ages. And volunteering is another really, really good way of attacking loneliness because it gets people involved in helping others within their community.